So one of the most common questions I get asked about is gi shrinkage. Whenever you buy a brand new gi, it's gonna shrink down a little bit. Most manufacturers say around about 5%, but what does that actually mean? Okay, I've got a couple of my my brand new athlete that I've never worn over here, an athlete that's been washed one time, and then a really old beaten up athlete, so that you can see the difference between the two. Okay, the reason I'm using this athlete is because I just got it sent through the post by Scramble. Awesome looking gi, and it's going to give us a really good example of how gis can change size over time. Okay, so if we look at the completely unwashed athlete, which will go up here, bing, it looks a bit big. Okay, it's way too long in the arms, body's too big. Generally, I think it kind of makes me look like I've borrowed my dad's suit and I'm about to go to my first prom. Okay, it's not going to be a great fit for competition or really for training. It's a little bit too big. Okay, but if we look at this is a single washed athlete up here now, you can see that it's shrunk down and it's almost the perfect size for me. It will probably shrink down a little bit more the next few times that I wash it, but it's great. You know, it fits much better. The length's great, sleeve length's great. I'd be able to get away with this in competition, and we're pretty much good to go. The final one, if we look at my completely beaten up, dead, dying, you know, gi that I've probably had for 3 years, it looks like this. And you can see, again, it's shrunk down even further, and I'd probably just about get away with competition, but it's going to be close to the bone, and I might or might not want to risk that. Okay. Now, all of these gis have been washed exactly the same way, well, apart from the unwashed one over there. They're all done at either 30 or 40 degrees, just regular biodegradable detergent, and then they are hung dry. Okay, nothing fancy is done to them. I've not put them in the dryer, anything like that. So let's look at a bit of a better example of how you can see the difference between the two. We'll talk about jackets first, and then maybe we can look at the gi pants in a second. Okay, so this is a completely unwashed athlete. Okay, before we go into anything else, one of my favorite colorways that Scramble have done. I love the teal and the gold that they've put in there. Looks absolutely awesome. But that's beside the point. This is a 350 gram per square meter cotton, which is very light. Okay, this is going to be a really great competition gi. It's going to be great for the summer. But it might not be something that's going to have the same longevity as, say, a 450 gi, which is kind of your standard training gi. Okay, just naturally, it's a lighter weave. It's not going to take as much abuse. Okay, it'll last for a long time, particularly if you're only training a couple of times a week. But the heavier gi of 450 is kind of your more standard weight gi. Okay, and then above that, you have the even heavier weight gis, which is 550. What that means in terms of shrinkage, the heavier the weight, the less kind of shrinkage that you're going to get in the gi. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind when you're doing that. If I now place this like as my other athlete, again 350, I'm going to place it on top here so you can kind of start to see the difference of what happens when you wash a gi. So this is not as laid out as nicely as I'd liked, but you guys can kind of start to get the idea. So if you look at the sleeves have basically lost the same width as the ribbing. I would say that's probably about 4 centimeters, inch and a half for you people who like the metric. And they've also lost a little bit off the top as well. So they've narrowed down a little bit, probably by about 1.5 centimeters. If you look at the bodies are pretty close in size, although let me pull this all the way up to the top. The length has changed here. So again, we've probably got about 1 inch off the bottom, and we've got a slight decrease in the width down here of probably around about 1 centimeter. Like I said, this is completely expected. Any gi that you buy will do this. Okay. Now, if we talk about the tops, the last one, which is my completely beaten up old athlete, I don't even want, well, they're on athlete 6, so I don't know what number this is. Let me make sure it's getting a good thing. I think this might be like 3, might even be the first one that they did. So, you know, like I said, lightweight gi is not necessarily hard wearing. This guy has been abused, like utterly abused, and it's still trucking along pretty well. Okay, so again, you can see the width of the arms has changed again. So they've narrowed down probably again by around about 1 centimeter. If I get them right to the top up here, it's probably the best way to see. You can see that, yeah, if we look at this towards this end, the taper's pretty good in the shoulders, but it's cut down towards the thing. We've lost probably another 4 centimeters off it. Length is approximately the same, but the width is definitely cut down on this one. You'll see it even more if I take this guy out. Let's see how good at magic I am. Terrible. If I take this guy out and lay it on top, you're going to really notice the difference between the two. So when we go over here, you can really see how much a gi can change in size. Okay, so now, again, if we look at this bottom part of the sleeve, we've got a good, probably about that, I would say 2 to 3 inches off the end of the sleeves on both sides. We have the body's narrowed down, the length is reduced down a little bit. Generally quite a much smaller gi. That's how much gis can shrink, and why it's really important that you take that into account when buying a new gi. If we look at the trousers, you'll probably see something similar in all of the trousers as well, okay? So, standard unwashed Athlite, and you can see my rather crinkled. No, I definitely do not iron my gis. Now, the single wash on the Athlite, let me put it at the top so you can see. Again, we've lost basically the width of that taper, the band at the bottom, the cut in there. And, let me pull this over. We've got about, I would say again, around about 1 centimeter coming off the edge of this gi. Okay, so they're gonna shrink down a lot better as well, as you'll see in the video. Okay, and then the last one are Athlite, very, very old school Athlite. Has, again, a similar factor come down on the shrinkage, okay? So these are all ripstop pants, there's no change in it, but you can see the difference. Again, it's shrunk down quite a lot. So my recommendation is, if you are close to a size of a gi, so let's say you're kind of erring on the idea of like an A1 or an A2, okay, and you're on that kind of cusp, that boundary of what the manufacturer recommends, I would probably go for the slightly larger gi, and then it will shrink down and probably become a really good fit, okay? That's something to take into account. If it's a heavier weight gi, you can probably get away with the one that they recommend, okay? So it's just something to kind of bear into mind when you're buying a new gi. Your gi will shrink down. It does not matter what weight it is. That will only affect how much it shrinks, but it will shrink. So if it's perfectly fitting when you put it on the first time, it's going to be too small by the time you come to wash it, and you're going to need to replace it quicker, okay? Because it's going to get tight, going to get uncomfortable. You need to get it to the right size. So hopefully that's useful. Hopefully you found it kind of informative. Any questions, let me know.